Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic for our Friday Cryptic Crossword Masterclass. Now, with Simon on the slopes, it falls to me to have a go at this. I just want to check my microphone's working, I think it is. It falls to me to have a go at this today, and I've promised two things. One is that I will try and explain everything as I go, and the second corollary to that is that I will go a lot slower than I normally would. So normally I'd be just sitting here desperately trying to get the answers and fire them in to get as quick a time as possible. I'm going to forswear that today, not worry about my position on the leaderboard or my average times for the year. In fact, I'll probably make up a time at the end that represents my likely time for this puzzle. But I do want to explain the clues to you as we go. That is very important. And we're going to have a go. So this is today's Times Cryptic Crossword, number 28559, and I'm just going to call it up. As always in the Times, we don't know the constructor, they are anonymous. So let's have a look at one across, of course. Scotland not getting its own back in Balkan country. The thing I'm immediately thinking about that is AIN, A-I-N, is a word for own in Scottish dialect, and it appears backwards in things like Bosnia, which is a Balkan country. No, I don't know what's happening there, so I'm going to try one down. Fitting a rugby player of exceptional size. Wow, okay, don't know what's happening there. Rugby players include prop, hooker, lock, flanker, and then some longer ones in the back, scrum half, fly half. Right, two down looks like an anagram, because you can't imagine that rib chops eye would be in a clue together, having actual meanings, because it's such an infelicitous phrase. So they really look like anagram content. If we add up the letters in rib chops eye, that's 9 letters, which is the enumeration here. So it looks like it's going to be a definition of C, and then rib chops eye demolished, i.e. knocked all together or broken up. And well done if you can see the anagram there. And I use the word C in that sentence, not in the way that this works. There is a definition of C as a noun that is the area over the area of a country which a bishop oversees, and it's otherwise known as a bishopric, which is the anagram of rib chops eye. So I'm just going to pop back to one across. Bosnia? No, I don't know. Yes, okay. Albania is another Balkan country. Well done if you thought of that one. And if you take AIN backwards out of Albania, you're left with Alba. And I do know that based on the Latin for white, probably because it was always covered with snow when they saw it, that is an old name for Scotland. Before, I think, even it was called Caledonia by the Romans, I suspect. Now, okay, Prop was one of the rugby players that I mentioned, the first one. Where's number 1 or 3? And A is in the clue, and I didn't realise that that might be giving a letter until I had A in the grid. But we use the checking letters we get to have a think about that. So, A, prop, and of exceptional size. Well, that can sometimes be, it could be another short word like huge or big, but OS for outsize. It's a sort of old clothing abbreviation, I think. But it's familiar to crossword solvers. And if we put A, prop, OS together, we get apropos, which is a kind of fancy word for fitting or apt or appropriate, from the French, obviously. Right, let's have a look at 10 across. Begrudges, and I can see that R and S in the grid. I haven't looked at another word in the clue, but I'm going to be astonished if the answer is not resents. So let's have a look at the rest of the clue, which is probably wordplay for resents. Housing costs, rents, around London area, while in England the SE, the southeast, or sometimes known as the home counties, is the area around London. So there we go. That was quite easy. There is a term amongst crossword bloggers which is biffed, bunged in from definition, it sounds like. It stands for. And you could easily have done that from begrudges there, because there aren't many definitions or synonyms of begrudge. Right, now let's have a look at a long one. 12 across. 2 soups claiming small screen broadcast. Critique extremely glowing. I'd be more impressed with that clue if there was a program called 2 Soups, but I'm not convinced there is. Anyway, I don't know what's going on. Broadcast can be an anagram indicator. So we could be looking at an anagram of... That's interesting. We could be... I mean, we need 15 letters. Small can be abbreviated to S in the Times crossword, not interestingly in the listener. And 2 soups, well, that's 8 letters. So we could have 2 soups S screen. But we could also have soup S screen. And the trouble is, if we think about the critique extremely glowing. Well, that can't all be definition because they're different things. So I think I'm probably on the wrong track there. But I am thinking about phosphorescent for, faux, or pho is the Thai soup, isn't it? So that appears twice. Furs. In fact, those faux, I'm going to call them faux. I'm sorry to Thais and other Southeast Asians for my pronunciation of your national soup dish, but I'm going to call it PHO faux. And if we have if we have soups, they're faux. And if we have that again, oh no, it's faux and faux claiming S. Then an anagram of screen, resin. And then we get a T. Why is that critique extremely? I don't know. I'm pretty sure the answer is phosphorescent. Oh, phosphorescence. Sorry, that was the wrong length. So I can't actually tell 14 and 15 letter words apart in my head. Right, the extremes of critique are C and E. If you look at the word critique, but only extremely, using its extreme letters, you get C and E. So this is a classic example of a clue using the use mention separation. So we had to not consider the meaning of small or screen. They just became the letter S, which is an abbreviation for small. The letters used in screen got broadcast around. And critique, we had to ignore its meaning as well. It's just being mentioned rather than used. Right, 13 across. Creativity encapsulated by senior European intellectual. Well, senior can be SR, European can be E. And we're always looking for short synonyms. And creativity can be art. So if you put art and you encapsulate it within SR, add the E for European, and you get Sartre, who is an intellectual. He also happens to be a European intellectual, but the duty European is doing in the clue is to the wordplay, not to Jean-Paul Sartre. Right, let's have a look at this. NPR, it's a 14-letter word again. Cold such as nothing comes close to. Well, I was thinking unparalleled, but that doesn't allow a letter here, so that's not right. Oh, this is almost a cracking the cryptic word. So then I was thinking unapproximate as nothing coming close to, but then I realised that's really not cold, but unapproachable is. And just as a hard sudoku might be described as, oh, missed an O there, as unapproachable, so might somebody who was aloof and cold. Such as nothing. So it's kind of two definitions here. Cold is unapproachable, and in a way that nothing comes close to is not being approached. Right, result of lob. That's a very interesting short clue. I don't know the answer there. Yes, I do now. Okay, so what could a lob be? It's a stroke in tennis, especially. There are other sports in which you can lob the ball up, but in tennis it's a shot and it goes up. So an up shot, perhaps. I mean, you'd never actually describe it as an upshot, but you could in theory, and that's why we get the question mark in the clue. And upshot can mean a result. So I'm going to have a look at 3 across. It would be a useful one to get because it would give us lots of first letters. So let's have a real think about this. Bear east of port, coming across a storm. Now, bear can mean lots of things. It can mean the animal, which it sounds like, but it can also mean to carry, or to give birth, or to tolerate, to suffer. But I don't know what the answer is here. Something there might help. Now, port can be a drink, but there are a lot of ports in the world. East of could either be placing bear to the right of the word for bear to the right of a port, or it could be looking at the last letter of port, which is the easternmost letter in it. And coming across A probably means we put an A in the answer, but I don't know what the answer is, so if you figured it out from that, well done. Let's have a look at 5 down. Gents perhaps need whipping, and this one needs tying up. Right, gents perhaps is suggesting a toilet facility to me. Loo is of course the classic English word for a toilet, and that's making me think, given this E and the 5-3, loose end, and that is something that needs tying up. So we can get an anagram of need out of the last 4 letters of loose end. That needs gents to be loos, and I suppose gents could be plural as well as singular. So there we go. I'm going to have a look at 6 down. Another 14 letter. It's very unusual for all the long answers or lots of them to be just single words. But let's have a look at this. Mustang. Don't peg out now, do you hear? This will help you breathe. Mustang is a very strange word. I was just thinking the other day. Well, I was thinking about how various American football teams have names that essentially mean the same thing, like Buccaneers and Raiders. And then I thought about Broncos and Colts, but Mustangs can be Broncos, can't they? They're the same sort of thing. They certainly are to an ignorant English person. But Bronco is quite good because bronc is also the beginning of words meaning lungs. So I don't actually know what this is, but I think it begins with bronc. Maybe just bronc is short for bronco. So don't peg out now. Interesting. I mean, I'd be very confident that begins with bronc, but maybe I don't know the scientific word for something that'll help you breathe. Is there an artificial bronchus? Oh, gosh, don't know. Or it could be a drug that helps with the lungs. Let's have a look at 7 down. Here, name attached to limerick writer. Well, the only famous limerick writer is Edward Lear. If you attach N for name to that, you get learn, and that can mean if you learn something, you hear it. Right, blasted meatloaf finally going brown. Well, the first thing I'm thinking about that is it suggests blasted suggests making an anagram. Meatloaf is too many letters for a 7-letter answer. But finally going gives us the clue there. So we get rid of the last letter of meatloaf, and we are left with MEATLOA. And if we blast them, jumble the letters around, we're going to get something meaning brown. And very well done if you've spotted oatmeal out of that, because it's got 2 vowel clusters. It begins with a vowel, and that's pretty hard. Now, my brain just looks at 3 across. I've totally forgotten what the clue was, but it looks at that and goes, I think hullabaloo would fit. And I know I'm very lucky to have a brain that is basically a word matcher. So I'm not saying that's definitely the answer, but there won't be many letter strings that fit this. and a storm could be a hullabaloo. Now, Baloo is a bear. Now, I wasn't expecting a specific named bear to come out of this. Hull is a port. So if we put Baloo to the east of Hull, not in the North Sea, but literally in the puzzle, and it all comes across the letter A, we will get this hullabaloo, which is a rumpus or a storm. 11 across. I should have looked at this before. Tornado converted into Hummer. Well, converted is very, very clear. We're looking at the letters of tornado, seeing that they're all in this 11 across. So we need an anagram of tornado. Well, Hummer gets a question mark, so we could be looking for anything very loosely connected with humming. The only anagram I can think of that will fit is odorant. And it does take me a moment or two to work out, well, what's that got to do with humming? But to hum can mean to smell bad. So odorant is relevant there. And I mean, this is going to work for Bronk, but since I didn't get anything else in 6 down, it hasn't really advanced me. Let's have a look at 14 across. Playing well, Arsenal's wingers relaxed. That's interesting. There don't seem to be enough letters. Playing, again, can be an anagram indicator. But, and I know Arsenal's provides 8 letters, but that doesn't account for the well. And Arsenal's wingers is more suggesting to me the extreme letters of Arsenal, A and L. And in fact, yes, playing is nothing to do with an anagram indicator. We actually need a phrase for playing well. It's often said by British puzzle solvers that they get really thrown when they look at an American puzzle and realise that an answer that is given as 6 letters could be a phrase, like in a way. And because it's not specified, like the phrases in the enumerations here, like 4, 3 and 24 across, that can throw them. However, sometimes in the wordplay, you do get a phrase needed that's not just a word. So if you're playing well, you're in form. Arsenal's wingers, as I said, are AL. And if we put that together, we get informal, which can mean relaxed, which is a very neat word. Now, let's have a look at 17 across. Bloomer, that can often be a flower in a puzzle. It sounds like a mistake or a loaf. Anyway, bloomer from bloke on bike, perhaps. Confusing whereabouts of A and E. Well, as soon as I see bloke on bike, perhaps, I'm thinking about a cyclist. And as soon that C is indicative that we could begin CYC, but that A is not working for cyclist. But then cyclamen is spelt CYCL and is a plant, a flower. I think we have some cyclamen in my garden, which is very nice. Now, how do we get to cyclamen from bloke on bike and perhaps confusing whereabouts of A and E? Well, bloke on bike perhaps suggests that it's a phrase that isn't normally used for a bloke on a bike, and a cycleman would fit that bill. And a cycleman confusing the locations of A and E in the word would come out as cyclamen, which is quite a neat juxtaposition, I think. Right, let's have a look at 16 down. Have good intentions from humble origin. Well, a phrase for have good intentions is mean well. And that seems to fit. And very simply, the wordplay here is humble can mean mean, in the sense of a mean dwelling. And origin can be a well, the source of words or water, for instance. So that's quite handy. Now, there are lots of words ending B something E. Shall we have a look at 21 across, which is at last a 15-letter phrase. Open venue in New York, finishing with WC Fields. Right, well done if you've got this. I have, because I'm a sports fan. So there's a hint. Now, the answer is the definition comes as open venue in New York. So if you know your tennis grand slams. This will be very easy. But the wordplay, the first word is given by finishing with WC, and the second word is given by Fields, which is very clever, because you see W.C. Fields, you think of the famous actor, comedian from black and white movies, but it's nothing to do with him. You have to separate, you have to lift out of the clue W.C. Fields and separate the parts. And you get finishing with WC, and you're flushing, and you get Fields, and they're meadows. And the answer to this is Flushing Meadows. Now, I always hoped that Flushing Meadow should be a singular word, because I love the fact that it contains 14 different letters. And there are very, very few words in English that contain 14 different letters. But annoyingly, it is plural, as this clue has it. And therefore, there are 2 S's in it, which has always disappointed me. That's how weird I am. Right, 17 down. Back on board, wearing headphones and loose items of clothing. I didn't see what that is immediately, but headphones. Do you know any synonyms for headphones? Well, there's a slang term, don't know if it's still in use, but cans, for the big headphones that you put on. And if we try and fit cans around something here, maybe the item that will spring to mind, we've got loose items of clothing mentioned, and back on board. Well, caftans are loose items of clothing. You can spell them with a K at the beginning, but you can also spell them with a C. And that'll leave AFT to be back on board. And you may know that on ships you can be fore at the front or aft at the back. And aft is the back on board there. Okay, let's have a look at 23 across. Car was leaking endlessly in condition to be picked up. Well, was leaking. If you bleed, you leak. Well, if a pipe bleeds, it's leaking. Maybe a human leaking would be bleeding as well. But was leaking could be bled. And that endlessly will give us the suffix here, BLE. But that leaves a 4-letter word to be car, beginning with A. I immediately thought of auto, but I don't think autoble is a word. And in condition to be picked up. Well, there are different ways of things being picked up. And one of them is by ear, and something that can be picked up by ear is audible, and that gives us an Audi as our 4-letter car. So an Audi is an auto. Let's have a look at 22. Looks a lot like under, could be udder actually at this point. Lower organ heading off vibration. Right, well that is udder. This is very, you have to be very careful with this actually. That's really interesting. Because if you were thinking of under only as a possibility, you'd see the first word in the clue, lower. Well, that's like under. It probably is. And then you might not bother working out what the rest of the clue was giving you. That would be a huge mistake. Because in this clue, lower doesn't mean under or beneath. Lower is an animal that lows, which is to moo. So a cow's organ is, of course, an udder. And the heading off vibration bit, I think, is referring to judder, and you take the heading off it, and you get udder. So, well, not possibly deliberate, but certainly a trap there. Now, let's have a look at 25 cross. I was thinking surveillance when I saw those beginning letters, but Darley, perhaps, not unknown among county celebs. Normally, I would look at the word Darley and go, well, that's clearly there to supply its useful letters to something. But in fact, in this case, I'm thinking about the sort of artist Darley was. And it's a very neat word play. So unknown can be the letters X, Y, or Z. They're often the unknowns in algebraic formulas, and they're very familiar. And in this case, you kind of have to imagine the county celebs in Simon's county of Surrey. Maybe Simon isn't himself in the Surrey A-list yet. Maybe he is. But if you imagine that there is a Surrey A-list and you remove the unknown letter Y out of it, you get surrealist, like Salvador Dali, which is a very nice clue. Now, I'm really none the wiser on this Bronco. I'm sure that'll be an H now, but Bronco something down here. We're going to have to get that from the extra letters. I'm going to have to get that from the extra letters. You are going to have to get it because of your extensive medical knowledge. 20 down. Speck among foremost of Europe's smoked hams. Well, again, we're being very, very clearly led to think about meat. And speck, I think, is a smoked ham. And smoked ham is a delicacy in much of Europe. But let's split it all up again. Let's just look at hams. There's different meanings of hams. They can be the backs of your legs. They can be any kind of muscular part of your body. But they can also be radio enthusiasts. And it can be a verb. To ham is to act badly. And American puzzle solvers will be familiar that emote is another word meaning to act badly or to overact. And emotes would fit here. Now a speck, as well as being a smoked ham or whatever it is, I actually once thought it was whale meat. I don't know. Anyway, a speck can also be a little particle. So that could be a mite or a mote. And emotes has a mote in it. And the foremost letters of the two words Europe's and smoked are E and S. So you put the mote into those and you get emotes. So, 24 across, glibly repeat, left winger expelled. This is really all about your ability to think of synonyms and synonym phrases. To glibly repeat something is to just churn it out there, to say it again. And the phrase I immediately think of is trot out. Now that works very neatly with the wordplay here, because a left winger, a Trotskyite, at least if we go back to the Second World War when much of this vocabulary began, is a trot, and expelled is out, so we can fill in trot out and be confident that's right. Going to have a look at 15 down. We've got 3 checked letters in this 9-letter word. Underground, no good creature of myth that will move in time. Well, I wasn't getting anything from underground, no good creature of myth. I was sort of vaguely drawn towards minotaurs, but that will move in time, and this letter string suggests strongly to me a metronome. And that works very neatly. An underground system in a city is a metro. And a creature of myth is a gnome. So are we sounding like that gnome, or are we getting rid of its G? Well, we're doing the latter because of no good. That tells us to get rid of the letter G, which stands for good. And we get metronome. Have a quick look at 19 down. There's not that many words that will fit here. MP's set for reshuffle. That looks like we're going to anagram those 6 letters, but that's going to leave us 1 letter short. So MP's set for reshuffle to accommodate ego trip. And ego trip, interestingly, not hyphen there, so suggesting that we maybe do want to separate up the letters. But can ego give us just 1 letter? I suppose it could be I. Ego is the Latin for I. I don't know the answer here yet, actually, but I'm thinking that I'm anagramming MP's set, throwing in the letter I, and I'm getting a trip. Yes, it's taken me a while, but it's misstep. And well done if you got to that quickly. So if you misstep, you trip up, very literally. Obviously, even metaphorically, both a misstep and a trip could be a mistake, or a gaffe, or a bloomer, or an error. I like thinking of these short synonyms. Right, we'll go down to 26. I'm found in transient employment. Well, this is the example of a clue called an and lit, which is very clever. And in an and lit clue, all of the clue is used as both wordplay in one reading and as a definition in another. And in this clue, that's talking about the answer. It's as though the answer is talking to you. And it's saying, I'm found in the phrase, in the letters of transient employment. And if you look in the letters of transient employment and you're guided by the letters we have in the grid, you will find the 4-letter word temp. And then if you think about that whole sentence as a definition as well, Well, a temp is found in transient employment because they're not permanent. Very clever wording. I mean, not a very hard clue to answer. But at first you'd go, oh, well, there doesn't seem enough clue. Because how can I'm be the definition if you found the wordplay first? And if you found the definition first, you'd go, well, where's the wordplay? But it's doing both all at once, which is very impressive. Right, 18 across, 2 men in casualty. Very neat, short clue. If a brief clue is accurate and yet still misleading, I'm always very impressed. And here we need, well, it looks like casualty is A&E, which actually appears in the clue above, weirdly, in a hospital. But there are other meanings of casualty, including somebody who is hurt. And that person is a victim. And 2 men are involved in making up victim. They are Vic or Victor and Tim or Timothy. So if we put them together, we get victim. And now, this isn't actually all that wonderful. We've got vowels all the way down. So we're trying to think of bronco something that would help you breathe. Now, I have had a thought in the last second. And I think you have to have that thought to solve this clue. So, you know, I don't think I know much about medicine. I don't know anybody who's had help with their lungs. But I can imagine that there is a bronchodilator to dilate the bronchi. Which is handy that I can imagine it, because don't peg out now, do you hear, is giving us this dilator. How is it doing that? It's very nice. It's very nice indeed. It's the whole clue, in fact, is saying to a Mustang or Bronco, don't peg out now, don't die now, die later. And if you say the phrase Bronco die later, then that's going to give you the answer to this, which is a lovely way to finish, actually. That's a really beautiful, full 14-letter phrase that sounds like something totally different from what it means. And it just amuses me a lot. But there you go. I enjoyed that puzzle, actually. It's a good Friday puzzle. I don't think it was all that difficult. I've spent 31 minutes explaining it to you. I would expect to be finished with that in about my average time for solving the times, which is somewhere around 6 minutes at the moment. So that's how long I think it would have taken. I hope you've benefited from having some explanations and enjoyed the video. I hope I've satisfactorily stood in for Simon this week. But an excellent puzzle, good fun. I'm going to submit it to check that we've got it right. Don't think I need to call up the dictionary this week. I mean, you know, one could check that bronchodilator was a word, but I'm sure you can check that elsewhere. Flushing Meadows won't be in the dictionary because it's a proper noun. But there we go. That is the Times crossword today. Good fun, and well, let's just have a look actually at the quicker times, because it's always interesting. So lots of these times are by people who just solve offline and then enter their answers, including the first 4 there. But Aphis99, Andy Fisher, fabulous time of 6 minutes 41. The other really quick people haven't been in today, basically, yet, or there is always a chance they've made a mistake, and that under other thing is a possible mistake area. But let's just flick down to the hundreds, see who the 1 mistakers are. No, nobody who I would expect to be there. But Andy Fisher's time of 6:41 is indicative that this is, for the best solvers, I would say this is kind of a 6-minute crossword. But pretty tough if you're new to it, to be fair. Some very nice bits of wordplay there, and well worth doing. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon on the channel. Bye for now.